Yeah, we back. We back. Now today is going to be a controversial video, a different type of video, but it's going to shed light on why the Dominican Republic and Haiti has always had some tension between the two nations, right? I'm going to touch on a couple topics. The 1805, as the Dominicans call it, the invasion by the Haitians in 1805. That's going to be the majority of this discussion. Now, I expect many Dominican nationalists to pile into the comment section. But like I said, it is what it is. I don't get emotional about these things. Even the Parsley Massacre, I don't even get emotional about that because in my opinion, Haitians created Rafael Trujillo, and I'm going to tell you why later on in the video. We created him. We put him on this earth. We created our own demon that came in and massacred thousands of us. We created him. But I'm going to touch on that later. Now, I know these topics can drive emotion, but I just want both sides, whether you Haitian or Dominican, or even if you're an outsider, let's just, let's keep it respectful. Let's keep it cool. Let's keep it cordial. And, let's get into it. Now, some Haitians like to say that, we never invaded the Dominican Republic. We never, we saved the Dominicans. The majority of Dominicans are mixed race, and a portion of them are straight up white Spaniards, and then you have a fraction of them that are black Africans. So, did we save the mixed race and the white folk? I don't like to say that we saved the Dominicans when only a fraction of them were black Africans. That's my opinion. That's my opinion. Because when you say you saved the Dominicans, that ignores that a portion of their population were straight up whites, and then a portion of their population was the sons of whites and the daughters of whites, and then the rest of them were black. So, I don't like to say that we saved them. I think that we have two different demographics, two different cultures, two different histories. Same island, of course, but contrary to popular belief, we're not the same people, though. I got love for the Dominicans. I don't got no beef. Like, my enemy is the European. My enemy is the Frenchman and the Western colonial powers. I can't waste no time beefing with a Dominican. That's beneath me. But I don't like to say that we saved the Dominicans. That's I think we're simply protecting our interests. As simple as that. Now, whether some black Dominicans benefited from that's neither here nor there. I don't think we're concerned about that. I don't think we're really concerned about that. I think we're primarily concerned with protecting our interests and protecting our people. And maybe some Dominicans might have benefited from that who happen to be black. But let's get into it. Now, in the early 1805, you had the newly created nation of Haiti to the west. And then you had the Spanish colony of Santo Domingo to the east. Now, the main foreign policy at the time for the new created government of Haiti was the fear of re-enslavement, the fear of an invasion by a Western European colonial force to reestablish the institution of slavery. After the French military was destroyed and vanquished and eliminated on the field of battle, a large number of Frenchmen went over the border and set up shop in the Spanish colony of Santo Domingo to the east. Eventually, they were driven out years later, but in their initial arrivals in 1804, 1805, they were not given any resistance, and they pretty much were able to set up shop on the Spanish part of the island. And when they set up shop on the Spanish part of the island, they began devising a plan to reestablish hostilities with the Haitian part of the island by a series of military tactics such as kidnappings and, irregular warfare, things like that. And this is what led to Dessalines and Christophe and many of the illustrious black men of that time to, take it upon themselves to go crazy, on that side of the island. And still to this day, there are many Dominicans who harbor resentment for those events. But I think that looking at the situation without a biased lens, I think any man would do the same thing if he was placed in a similar situation. And we're going to discuss the context of that situation in today's video. Take a look up on the screen. A returned French commander-in-chief, General Ferrand, now declared publicly his intentions in a decree issued on the 6th of January 1805 from his headquarters in Santo Domingo. Article 1 of that decree authorized the residents of the departments of Ozama and the Cibao to begin expeditions to apprehend and imprison insurgents of the occupied frontier regions, with that designation referring for all intents and purposes to the blacks and mulattoes of the borderlands. Articles 2 and 3 guaranteed that such prisoners will belong as property to their captors. Article 4 expressly stipulated that black and mulatto children 10 years of age or younger were to be kept inside the colony and not exported. But Article 5 allowed that boys of 10 to 14 years of age and females of 12 to 14 years to be sold, but only through the port of Santo Domingo as required by Article 6. Article 13 offered a suspension of hostilities against all those insurgents who recognized their error and submitted to the authority of the French Emperor. Not only did this authorize aggression against a young neighboring nation, it also, in opposition to Haitian independence and Spanish sovereignty, brazenly gave instructions for the hunting of Haitians, their capture, their sale as slaves, and exportation as if they were agricultural products. Now, I read that passage to kind of lay the groundwork for the context of the situation, because some Dominican nationalists would have you believe that the 1805 military campaigns in the East was directed against the Dominican people, but in my opinion, they were simply collateral damage because they did not rise up against the French, who were actively engaging in hostilities against Haiti during that time. It was never really something directly against the Dominican people. To me, it was simply collateral damage. The military campaign in the East was directed against French General Ferrand and his military activities in the border when he was kidnapping Haitian children. That's what it really was, man. That's what it really was. And like I said, any man who loves his people would always defend his women and children. Now let's continue. During the months that Dessalines was organizing his government in the Haitian capital, a small group of French soldiers maintained a garrison in the Dominican capital under the command of Brigadier General Jean-Louis Ferrand. Slavery was well established in Santo Domingo by the time that Ferrand arrived to take command in 1804. Having initially accepted the Haitian presence in their country, citizens of the capital soon expressed their preference for the French rule, encouraged perhaps by the presence of French families taking refuge among the Dominicans. As a countermeasure to Dessalines' threat, General Ferrand issued his directive to the Dominicans. All Haitian prisoners older than 14 years of age were to be enslaved. Dessalines took this act as a provocation enough to launch his offensive against the East. This he did, departing on the 14th of May, 1804, from Cap-Haïtien with an army of 25,000 men, all of whom crossed the border in the southwest region. Dessalines then marched on the Dominican capital, intent on taking the tiny French garrison that defended it. Now, once again, the military campaign in the East was not directed against the Dominican people. It was directed against the French, who were taking refuge in the Dominican capital. But the Dominicans happened to be collateral damage. And I understand why Dominicans harbor resentment because of that, but we have to get the historical context correct. Now let's continue. Before the military campaigns in the East, Dessalines did put out a warning. He did put out a statement to the citizens of the Spanish side saying that, we're mobilizing for war and we're getting ready to, mobilize the troops. So I suggest that for anybody who does not have any allegiance or loyalty to the French, I suggest that you join our ranks, you join our side. But if you stay on the French side, if you stay, locked in with the French, then we're going to treat you as if you were a Frenchman. So I suggest that for those of y'all who want to ride with us, ride with us. If you're riding against us, then we're going to treat you like an enemy and an adversary. And unfortunately, that's what happened. It wasn't a surprise. It wasn't like they didn't know that we was on the way. Like, everybody knew what was happening. It wasn't a secret. The whole world knew. Dessalines made a declaration to the whole world. Like, listen, we about to move into the East very soon, very shortly. Like, it wasn't a surprise. So, in my opinion, I just think that the citizens of the East didn't take us serious at the time. They just didn't really, they're like, oh, that's them, it's them dumb Haitians, that's them, esclavos, so that's kind of how it went. Now let's continue. This is what Dessalines said before the military campaigns in the East. To the inhabitants of the Spanish part, scarce had the French army been expelled when you hastened to acknowledge my authority. By a free and spontaneous movement of your hearts, you range yourselves under my subjection, more careful of the prosperity and the ruin of that part which you inhabit. I give this homage a favorable reception. From that moment, I considered you as my children, and my fidelity to you remains undiminished. As proof of my paternal fortitude within the places which have submitted to my power, I have proposed for chiefs none but men chosen from among yourselves, jealous of counting you in the ranks of my friends, that I might give you all the time necessary for recollection, and I may assure myself of your fidelity. The incensed General Ferrand had not yet instilled into you the poison of falsehood and calumny. Writings originating in despair and weakness have been circulated, and immediately many amongst you, seduced by perfidious insinuations, solicited the friendship and protection of the French. They dare to outrage my kindness by coalescing with my cruel enemies. Spaniards, reflect. On the brink of the precipice which is dug under your feet, will that diabolical minister save you when that fire and sword I shall have pursued you to your last entrenchment? Now listen, man. I mean, Dessalines, it wasn't a surprise, bro. Like, it wasn't like Dessalines woke up on a random Tuesday morning and was like, listen, we gonna start smoking shit. No, he said pretty much this is what Dessalines said, in simple terms, man. He said that his hostilities and aggression is not directed against the Dominican people. It's not directed against the inhabitants of the East, right? He says that my target is set on the French who have taken refuge in the East. And it would be in your best interest to disconnect from the French, right? I know that the French have been circulating rumors and lies and talking down and slandering us, but it would be in your best interest to join our ranks instead of staying close to the ranks of the French and protecting the French and allying with the French. And said that if you disavow the French, if you disconnect from the French, you have nothing to worry about. I ensure your safety. I will not harm you. But if you continue to ally with the French, then you will be treated as the French. And he also went on to say that our actions against the French during the war were justified by the crimes they committed during the colonial period. So therefore, this is just a warning. This is a warning. It's not, listen, for those of y'all that want to ally with us, ally with us. And for those of y'all that want to stick with the French, just know we're going to treat you just like the French. And there were Dominicans that did ally with the Haitian army. There were some Dominicans that came back to the western half, and like I told you before, there was actually one Dominican in particular, I forget his name, Jose Campos Tavares, who was actually a high-ranking member in Christophe's government. So there were some Dominicans that did heed the call. They listened to the call, they took the warning, but there were many Dominicans that didn't. But like I said before, many of the inhabitants of the east, of the Spanish side of the island, they were white Europeans at the time, right? So they were white Europeans. So why would a white European Spaniard ally with the Haitians? I mean, logically, he has more in common with the European Frenchman than he does with the black African. You know what I mean? So you have to take into account the demographics of the island during that time. I know a lot of folks from the outside think that all Dominicans were black, but really it's just a fraction of them that are black, and the vast majority are the sons of whites and the daughters of whites. And then you have the purebred white Spaniard who was in power on the eastern side of the island during that time. So naturally, the white Spaniard allied with the white Frenchman against the black African, and the black African marched in 25,000 deep and was smoking shit, unfortunately. So let's continue. Dessalines did not long keep him waiting. Desiring to extend his authority over the entire island and angered by an injudicious decree of Ferrand, which permitted the enslaving of Haitians of over 14 years old found beyond the frontier, he invaded the country with a horde of 25,000 men. The population of the border towns fled before him in terror, the very slaves remaining with their masters rather than join him. Victorious in an engagement on the Yak River, he laid siege to the capital on March 5, 1805. In the meantime, his lieutenant, Christophe, overran the Cibao, sacking the towns and committing horrors. Santiago was captured before the inhabitants had time to flee, and a large number were murdered by the savage invaders. The members of the municipal council were hung naked on the balcony of the city hall. The people who had sought refuge in the main church were put to the sword and their bodies mutilated, and the priest was burnt alive in the church, the furniture of the edifice constituting his funeral pyre. Now, this invasion was simply an extension of the war between the French and the Haitians that was raging since 1791. If you ask me, I read a whole book on my homepage, on my YouTube page, entitled The Colonial System Unveiled, which goes into great detail about the atrocities committed by the French against the Haitians from, for hundreds of years. We're talking about babies being eaten by mastiffs. We're talking about women being drowned in the Artibonite River. We're talking about 500 Haitians a day being drowned in the Caribbean Sea. We're talking about Haitians being burned alive and impaled at the stake in the theater. We're talking about, people being amputated, legs cut off. I mean, the atrocities committed by the French, it doesn't compare. It don't compare. The literature is right there on my homepage if you want to take a look at it. But so you kind of get an idea behind the how do I say it? The passion in which the Haitian soldiers hunted down the French soldiers in the east You have to understand that the spirit of revenge was in the air during that time. The spirit of revenge was in the air. So combine that with the fact of the French soldiers who were able to survive the war. They ended up crossing the border and setting up shop in the Spanish side of the island, and then tried to continue to kidnap Haitian children along the border, engage in warfare along the border. So in Dessalines' mind, it was like, damn, I thought we got rid of these dudes, man. I thought we got rid of these folks, but they still here causing problems. So, you know, it didn't have to be that way. It didn't have to be that way. But like I said, Dessalines did put out the warning. He did make an announcement. You know, he did make an announcement. It was kind of like when Vladimir Putin was about to go into Ukraine. He was like, listen, we about to go in, you know, we about to go in. Like, it wasn't a surprise. Like, he said, listen, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do in response to this action. So when it happened, nobody was surprised. I think nobody took it serious, but when it happened, it wasn't a surprise though. So let's continue. The Otsego Herald newspaper, based in Cooperstown, New York, published details of Dessalines' 1805 campaign and reports on the massacre at Santiago. It said, the Haitian army had gone against Santo Domingo. They were said to amount to 40,000 men. Dessalines, the emperor, had marched at the head of these until they reached Santiago, an inland town of considerable strength. A council of war was then held, which was determined to storm the city. The emperor, however, was requested not to risk his life in an attempt. The direction of the siege was given to General Brave, who, after a desperate and bloody conflict, succeeded in carrying the city, not, however, with considerable loss. It was rumored that General Brave was mortally wounded and had lost about 1,000 of his best troops. The French and Spaniards found in the city, it was supposed, were all put to the sword. Now, like I said, man, I wish that it was more Dominicans that, listen, that just took the heed to the warning and was like, listen, we're not rocking with them dirty ass Frenchmen. But like I said, man, the white Spaniard has more in common with the white Frenchman than he does with the black African. So unfortunately, that's how that shit go. But let's continue. The Haitian invasion was a direct response to French General Ferrand's proclamation on the 6th of January 1805 to reinstate hostilities against the Haitians, and to his decree authorizing the frontier troops to conduct incursions into Haiti for the purpose of hunting black children less than 14 years old to be sold as slaves in the colony and abroad. With this measure, Ferrand believed that he could compensate the soldiers of the frontier for their services and at the same time enhance the financial position of the French colonial government through the collection of export duties. But it proved to be a provocation, for until that moment, relations between the two governments on the island had been tense but distant, and none had formally confronted each other. The publication of this decree precipitated an act of reprisal on the part of Dessalines. Later, Dessalines would explain by saying, I resolved to go and take control of the portion adjoining my states and to obliterate up to the last vestiges the European idol. Now, like they said, the relation between the two governments had been tense, but it never became anything where it was a direct confrontation until the French were going around hunting innocent children. It wasn't up until the French took it upon themselves to seek refuge in the Spanish part of the island and begin kidnapping children. That is when there was a direct military physical confrontation between both sides of the island. So unfortunately, the reason why there is a tense relationship between Dominicans and Haitians is really because of the French. You know, the French caused that shit, man. The French caused that division and tension, if we being 100% honest. Now, obviously, neither of us are innocent in this aspect. We've both committed atrocities against each other. In 1937, the Dominicans were famous for the Parsley Massacre. I'm not going to waste too much time on that, but I do want to touch on the fact that I said that Haitians were the ones that brought Rafael Trujillo into existence. So, and I'm going to explain what I mean by that. Did you know that Rafael Trujillo is connected by bloodline to Toussaint Louverture? Did you know that? Yeah, did you know that? Yeah, that is true. That is true. Take a look up on the screen. Chevalier, Rafael Trujillo's maternal grandmother, was the daughter of Justin Victor Turenne Blaise, who was of French descent, and Eleanor Juliette Chevalier Moreau, who was part of Haiti's mulatto class. From her mother's side, Chevalier was the granddaughter of Louise Moreau and her husband, Bernard Chevalier Louverture, a mulatto Haitian high-ranking officer and politician that established in Santo Cristobal with the Haitian occupation, from whom countless Dominican families descend, who was the son of French nobleman Jean-Baptiste Chevalier, and his wife, Marie Noël Louverture, the sister of Toussaint Louverture. Now, it was actually a Dominican brother that brought this to my attention recently. I did not even know this. But Toussaint Louverture's sister married a white man. Toussaint Louverture's sister married a white man. And that white man went on to have children, who went on to have children, who went on to have children, who went on to have Rafael Trujillo, who massacred thousands of Haitians. That's crazy. That's crazy. So a black woman married a white man, and later down the line, their descendant went on to massacre thousands upon thousands of Haitians. That is crazy. That is absolutely crazy. And I did not even know that piece of information. Wow. But anyways, man, like I said, man, both sides have committed atrocities against each other, have committed acts of aggression against each other. I'm not one of those Haitians who, you know, like I said, sitting around beefing with Dominicans, that's beneath me. You know, like, damn, that really shows me that we fell off as Haitians. Like, we used to be beefing with the French and the Spanish and the Portuguese and the British and the Americans. Now we beefing with the Dominicans, man, we done fell off, bro. You know what I'm saying? We done fell off, boy. You know, so I don't sit around trying to antagonize the Dominicans. Like, come on, bro. You know, and when Dominicans antagonize Haitians, it's like, come on, man. You know, come on, bro. You know, that's beneath me, man. That's beneath me, bro. And I understand, you know, in their storyline historically, they see us as adversaries, but I don't even see it like that, bro. I don't even see it like that. Like, I don't see it like that. We got a long list of enemies before we get to the Dominicans, you know. Haitians have a long list of enemies to confront before we get to the Dominicans. The Dominicans, if we're talking about the list of adversaries, the Dominicans are on the bottom of the list, man. They're on the bottom of the list, man. We got to, before we confront the Dominicans, we got to confront the Americans. We got to confront the Frenchmen. We got to confront the Canadians. We got to confront a whole bunch of people first before we get to the Dominican. We could handle the Dominican last. You know, we don't got to, man, that's beneath me. You know, that's beneath me. So I'm not making this video to incite any tensions. I'm just making this video because I just thought it was a cool topic. You know, it kind of sheds light on certain things, and we can kind of put that to rest on why the Haitians invaded the DR back in 1805, because it was an invasion. You know, some Haitians try to, you know, paint the picture, oh, it wasn't an invade. We invaded. You know, we can keep it a stat. You know, we can keep it real. Yeah, we invaded. We had justification. We invaded. We did. We had justification. So it is what it is, man. It is what it is. Keep it respectful in the comment section. That's all I can say. But anyways, man, it's your boy Neferkari. That's Celine back in the building. Yes, indeed. Cash App up on the screen, and I'm gone. Peace.